Get ready, Buffalo fans. You're listening to Charge, the podcast where the pulse of Buffalo sports beats strongest. From the gridiron to the ice, we're bringing you the analysis, news, and stories that matter most. And now, here's your host, Thomas DeLoss.
Let's go. What's going on, Bills Mafia? Happy Thursday. How are you? I'm Thomas DeLoss. Welcome to another episode of Charge here on Cover One. Super excited. We are literally 1 week away from the start of the NFL season. Next Thursday night at this time, you're going to have the good old Chiefs, the champions, the team everybody is sick to death of watching, playing against Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. Should be a terrific night. I know everybody, including myself, is clamoring for the start of football. It's been a long summer. It has been a long year since the end of the last season, 2023. So super excited to get back into it. And tonight starts the real beginning as we have a real special guest tonight. We have Alex Clancy, who's part of Locked on Cardinals. He's going to be joining us tonight to talk all about the Arizona Cardinals and really what to expect for that week one matchup. I know a lot of fans are really excited to see what Bills team we're going to get with only about, truly a series and a half of Josh Allen in the beginning of preseason. You haven't really gotten a full taste. You've gotten very much a sampling of the 2024 Joe Brady-led Buffalo Bills. So it's going to be exciting to see what this team looks like heading into the 2024 calendar year. We know there's been a ton of changes. We know there's been a lot of, kind of turnover and attrition. So it's going to be exciting to really get into the thick of it, tonight being the start of all that. But again, want to thank you for watching the Charge podcast here on Cover One. We've got a lot going on right now. Want to make sure you guys are subscribed and tuned in to the Cover One YouTube channel, where we've got all the best content, all the best shows. We have shows every single day of the week, so keep tuning into that. Also, want to make sure you guys are subscribed to the Cover One Pass. It gives you all the best content, all the inside news. Anytime something breaks, chances are you're going to hear it here first. But why don't I let two of the best, Greg Thompson, Aaron Quinn of the Cover One Buffalo podcast, tell you more about it.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content. Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
There you are, guys. That is two of the best in the game. Aaron Quinn, Greg Thompson. Make sure you guys subscribe to the Cover One Pass. Like I said, you get all the best information. You got the glossary that Greg has worked on so well that really gives you in-depth analysis on what goes into the salary cap. Anthony Prohaska and Eric Turner have worked so hard providing, really hands-on information and understanding concepts, play designs, really getting to the nitty-gritty of watching the game that you love. So again, like I said, subscribe to the Cover One Pass, but also make sure you subscribe, follow, and hit those notifications on the Cover One YouTube page. It'll let you know every single time one of our shows are live like we are right now. But let's get right into the main topic, the Feast de la Resistance. We're going to be talking to Alex Clancy, who is the host of the Locked on Cardinals podcast. Alex, what's going on, man?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Alex, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself as the host of Locked On?
Yeah, so I've been hosting Locked on Cardinals since 2017. Been in sports radio in Phoenix since 2011. Bounced around places, NBC Sports, Fox Sports, and kind of everywhere in between. And landed with Locked On, and David Locke was gracious enough to offer me the position years and years ago. And yeah, here we are, man.
Fantastic. So obviously, we are literally just over a week away from the start of the NFL season with the Buffalo Bills and Arizona Cardinals, a week away for the start of the actual season. Let's get into the thick of it. Obviously, we know with Arizona, there's a lot of turnover that's happened, a lot of fresh faces that have joined the team, but really a big part of the Arizona Cardinals this year and pretty much the organization is Kyler Murray. So, with Kyler coming back from injury right out of the gate, what is the expectations heading into the 2024 season with Kyler Murray?
Pretty big. The way I equate Cliff Kingsbury's time with Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals is, what if Urban Meyer was with Jacksonville for 4 years? That's kind of what we experienced with Phoenix. Jacksonville pulled the plug quickly. The Cardinals didn't. They even gave Cliff Kingsbury an extension. What we saw from Kyler Murray during the Cliff Kingsbury era was Kyler Murray winning in spite of Cliff Kingsbury and not because of him. And now we're at a point where they've got a much better ecosystem. Jonathan Gannon loves Kyler Murray. Monty Osborne loves Kyler Murray. They've got players surrounding him on offense that will allow him to eat like he hasn't before. And we've seen what I call the oh my God moments from Kyler Murray. We saw the Hail Murray, against Buffalo. But it wasn't even that. He was able to mask a lot of the issues the Cardinals have had over the last handful of seasons. Come back healthy after his torn ACL last year, looked good. The Cardinals were top 5 in rushing after he came back. This team is ready to rock on offense, and they've got Drew Petzing, offensive coordinator, who's got the perfect scheme for Kyler Murray to be able to execute. So, I'm not saying, and I'm definitely not a homer when it comes to the Cardinals. I'm not saying, Kyler Murray's going to win the MVP or he's going to be talked about that. Kyler Murray is going to surprise a lot of people this year because Cliff Kingsbury is gone and he is now healthy and in the new system that works so well, even with the lack of talent last year.
What do you think was the downfall with Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray? Why the guy was touted coming out of college as kind of an offensive genius. What happened?
How long is this podcast? How long you got? Let me get some water so I need to get some cubes here. Cliff Kingsbury never learned and never adapted. He never learned and never adapted. First of all, and this is no direct attack at the person. Very nice guy. Interviewed him a few times. Very soft-spoken, nice dude. People love him. He wasn't a good college head coach. He had Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes, and they didn't win a whole bunch of games. Okay, he had Caleb Williams last year. What happened with USC? They regressed. So when it comes to Cliff, he was in over his head. The issues, the penalties, a lot of penalties, a lot of misuse of timeouts and play clock. They had so many under 1 minute 3 and outs. Like, it just was never. It was never in synchronicity with Kyler Murray. It's kind of like, all right, Kyler, here you go. Now go save the team, because Cliff wasn't able to do so. He was a PE coach, and the Cardinals now have a history teacher or an English teacher that everybody loves, but it is also a leader in that regard.
Right. Now, based on that, obviously with Kyler looking to kind of take that next step and potentially put himself back on the map, we know that with the Cardinals, like I said, there's been some losses. Isaiah Simmons is out. Budda Baker did come back. Now you added MHJ. What are the expectations for a team like the Cardinals that I don't want to say that people kind of overlook them, but I don't think they're held in the same regard at this point, just because it hasn't really, since that 11-0 start a couple of years ago, it hasn't really clicked. So what's the feeling inside? What's the feeling amongst content creators about the Arizona Cardinals this year?
It's super conflicting and conflicted. Okay. The fan base is split. It's playoff or bust, or it's they're not going to win a bunch of games this year. This is how I see it. If they win 7 games, that's a 75% increase on what they did last year. If they win 8 games, that's 100%. If they win 9 games, it's 100 and whatever percent. I'm bad at math at this point. I've been out of college for a while. Like, it's what I would deem a successful season, because the defense is going to be terrible,
right,
compared to the offense. So what I would deem a successful season is the Cardinals under the in the hunt overlay in the playoffs, or in week 14 or week 15, with teams who have an outside chance looking in. They got a murderer's row schedule, and the offense is really going to have to carry the weight. The best defense the Cardinals have this year is time of possession with the offense on the field. So, the defense is not ready for prime time yet, unless, you've got some guys that surprise people. Their top pass rusher is out for the year. Their 27th overall pick, Darius Robinson, is on IR to start the season. So it's definitely not ideal on the defensive side. But for me, expectations, if they win 8 games, it is a rousing success in 2024.
Now, you mentioned, obviously, with the offense having to kind of carry the load for the defense, do they have enough with that offense? Obviously, James Conner, Trey Benson. You obviously got one of the hottest tight end names, not only in fantasy, but just in football, and Trey McBride. Do they have enough adding now with MHJ? Can that team, with Kyler's arm, with his, escapability, his ability to create out of structure and, kind of just, off platform, is that enough for this team to make some noise in an NFC that's kind of been devoid of most talent?
Yes, it is. There is not a better offense that Kyler Murray will have in the NFL. I mean, this is far and away the best, even though, the receiving core is young, obviously, with Marvin Harrison Jr. Michael Wilson showed out last year when he was healthy. He's going to be a bona fide wide receiver, too. Zay Jones coming over is kind of a wily vet, obviously. Drafted by Buffalo, I believe. I know he played in Buffalo.
Certainly did.
And then Greg Dortch is going to be, for dynasty fantasy football people, for regular fantasy football people with deep benches, Greg Dortch is going to be a hot button name, especially in PPR formats, in the slot. And then, what surprises people because they drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. number 4 overall is this is going to be a run-first team. Marvin Harrison Jr. is like the third option come week 1. It's going to be James Conner. It's going to be Trey McBride, as you mentioned. And Trey Benson's going to get a lot of run, too. So if the Cardinals are running the ball well, it makes everything else easier, which will yield, higher ratings, more points, more yards, which could in turn yield more wins. But if the Cardinals are down 14-0 every game because the defense can't stop anybody, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to be methodical and run the ball like they want to.
Now, with the run in the pass, obviously, I know they, go hand in hand, and James Conner's been pretty efficient so far. Do you anticipate that they're going to have to really, I mean, we know 2024, it's a pass happy kind of league, not only just in totality, but just the way that they structure their offense now. It's pass first, run second. Can they win just solely leaning into the run? I mean, nowadays being what they are, can Trey Benson and James Conner be enough?
Baltimore does it every year, and I'm not comparing the Cardinals to Baltimore by any stretch. Baltimore has had some of the most dominating offensive lines, dominating defenses that allows them to just run the rock. And Lamar Jackson is an absolute wizard in that respect, even, higher, more than Kyler Murray. Yes, they have to. And they've shown they can. Drew Petz's run scheme, run blocking, they've got the right guys in the right positions now with Paris Saint-Germain Jr. on the left, veteran Jonah Williams on the right. They've solved their left guard problem, which was a huge downside last year. Regardless, they ran the ball so well last year. If James Conner can stay healthy for the majority of the season, a lot of that is predicated upon Trey Benson's production, where James Conner doesn't have to touch the ball 25 times a game. Yeah. The one thing that I've been saying a lot, especially because the Cardinals offseason has been kind of boring, besides the draft, is boring wins. Boring is good. Look at what Isaiah Pacheco is doing in Kansas City. They understand that with the run game, quarterbacks don't have to have, I guess with whom I'm talking to, they don't have to have Josh Allen bonkers Madden on easy numbers to win games. You can be an elite quarterback and be the dictionary definition of a game manager in some respect and just be special when you need to be. And I think that's what they're going to be looking at with Kyler Murray in the run game. And yeah, boring wins, baby. And I'm here for it.
So with your run game, obviously you talked about the offensive line structure. I know a big point for you guys was a big time contract for Froholt. What has he meant to that offensive line for the Cardinals?
It's been a vision. There are a couple sneaky offensive lineman signings that have happened over the last handful of years. First one was Kelvin Beachum, who played with Pittsburgh. He played elsewhere. It was a 1-year, $2 million deal, and he's been a mainstay since. Will Hernandez, coming over from the Giants, started on a 1-year deal, and he's got a couple deals since. And Yalta Froholt coming over after Rodney Hudson stole $10, $12 million from the Cardinals when he came back out of retirement. That was the dysfunction, when the dysfunction was still there. Monty Ossenfort was very methodical last offseason. He brought over Kazir White, brought over a couple different guys that didn't make huge splashes. Yalta Froholt was the least of all splashiness. And the dude just came in, balled out allowed Will Hernandez just to play right guard and not to cover for center. And it's if you don't protect the quarterback, nothing's going to work. So the fact that he was able to do it and have it not be, Creed Humphrey money is incredible for the Cardinals.
So based on all of that, obviously you talked about the running game. I got to get into the big guy, what was probably your biggest draft pick, a guy that has obviously been in the news with fanatics, being him and his father being quite the pain in the ass to this point, apparently, and doing things the way they want to do. What has been the sentiment around, Arizona about MHJ, Marvin Harrison Jr.? How has he looked, and what kind of impact in year one can a rookie receiver who has, some of the best lineage you could possibly have, what is he going to mean to the Cardinals?
It's going to be good. Okay. It's going to be good. I was huge trade down. I was trade down guy because there was more help needed than a stud wide receiver. This offense would have been fine without him. And that's a beautiful thing, that with him, that pressure that inherently a rookie wide receiver one coming in with all the pub that he's had is not going to be there. He can ease into the game. And the fact that, I'm not saying he will. He could go for 10 and 120 and a touchdown in week one, but he doesn't have to keep the offense afloat. And that's a huge, huge power position to be in, because you're an opposing defense, and I'm sure we'll get into this in a bit. Are you going to stack 8 in the box? Or are you going to bracket Marvin Harrison Jr.? Pick your poison with this offense. Because if there are light boxes, this team will run all over pretty much any team at this point if everybody stays healthy, if they want to embark on the Kyler Murray running the ball, excursion on top of all of it. But that's the beauty of it. I'm sure he'll see bracket coverage this year, especially if he pops early. But this is a very, very deep offense, and future pacing goals for him, it's a lot easier to be really good if there are more options than just you on offense. And there are. So that's going to be it's going to be a spectacle to see. I would assume, and hopefully he stays healthy throughout his career.
Now, do you has he looked the part? I know
it looks very easy. It looks very easy for him with everything that he does. It's one of those things where it's like Gronk used to labor down the field. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't sexy. And then you see somebody like Lamar Jackson just make it look so easy.
Right.
And it's just, even like guys like Julian Edelman used to make it look so just effortless and easy. Devontae Adams to get open. It's like everybody knows where the ball is going and he's still wide open. I think that's a trajectory for him, at least from what we've seen so far. It's just easy and effortless and acrobatic catches and everything you want from a young man who's going to be with your team, at least for the next 4 years until the contract dispute happens.
Right. Do you anticipate that Marvin Harrison Jr. can elevate Kyler beyond what he's been thus far?
That's a good question. Yeah. Sometimes it's the simplest questions that are the most profound. It's like, here's the thing about Kyler Murray. It's either going to happen this year or we're going to be having very difficult conversations afterwards. Right. Whether he's injured for half the year or if he doesn't elevate this team, I don't think we're going to come anywhere close to that. But yes, Marvin Harrison Jr. makes Kyler Murray's job easier, 1,000,000%. So does the play calling too, when it's not just go routes on 3rd and 2 like it used to be with Cliff Kingsbury.
Right. Okay, so let's get into this week 1 matchup. Obviously, I know the Buffalo Bills. You know about the Buffalo Bills, whether it's in-depth or just overarching views of them. They've been a powerhouse in the AFC East. They've won the division 4 years in a row. They're a very, very highly touted team led by probably the second best quarterback in the game in Josh Allen. And there's been a bunch of turnover this year. Quite frankly, some people think it's a lot more because they don't pay attention enough. We've lost some captains, some veteran leadership on defense. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is now in Houston. Gabe Davis is in Jacksonville. We brought in Keon Coleman, one of the rookie wide receivers, and Curtis Samuel from Washington. There's been a bunch of change. So when you look at Arizona, and you said it yourself, and I kind of had the feeling based on what I've seen, what I've read, and what I've known in the past, that Arizona's defense hasn't really been up to snuff. What do they need to do to stifle at home, which I know you've never been to, the Ralph is what we call it, or Highmark Stadium. Yeah. Opening game, the home opener at a Bills game is as raucous as any college environment you could possibly get to. I mean, it is bonkers. The table jumping, whether it's flaming, drinks galore. It is a spectacle among spectacles. And it's loud. It's one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. For a guy like Kyler coming back into the situation with a Cardinals team and a defense that needs to prove itself, what do they need to do week 1 to get out to a hot start to be able to take down a giant like the Bills?
Win the time of possession battle.
Okay.
That's it. No turnovers, win the time of possession battle. If the Cardinals can be on the field from between, every minute is so incrementally important. It's like the Richter scale. It's like, it's only 2 minutes over 30 minutes. Well, that means a lot more. Like, if they could be on the field for 35, 36 minutes, that means they're scoring points. That means Josh Allen's on the sideline. That's the biggest. That is the biggest thing for them. And sure, like, Kyler Murray needs to be varying degrees of special every week. And I think that's obvious for any quarterback. But it looks different this year because it's in more of a controlled environment. When it comes down to this, they have no pass rush. They've got one of the youngest cornerback rooms in the league, and the offense is ready to rock. So the longer the offense can stay on the field, bleed clock, get first downs, score touchdowns, that's what it's going to be. And listen, this defense wasn't what it was 2 years ago. There's been a lot of names that are gone. Right. And it's something that the Cardinals will absolutely have to take advantage of week 1, because week 1 is really preseason. It's really the only preseason game. The Cardinals have had really good success early on. They beat Tennessee, who just made a deep playoff run 2 years ago, by 100 week 1 that nobody saw coming. So I'm not saying this is a foregone conclusion the Cardinals are going to win this game by any stretch. I think it's going to be closer than people think if the Cardinals can stay on the field longer than the Bills on offense.
Now, with their defense, what would you say, one, we'll go both ends of the spectrum. Yeah. I know you mentioned the defensive ends. Is there one point to the defense that you could see being the reason they lose? Like, it was just an absolute debacle where things just fall off? Pass rush.
Yeah. Well, because what are you going to do? You're going to give Josh Allen time to have a tea party in the backfield? Doesn't matter who the receivers are. Right. That's the biggest thing. The interior defensive line got better. The run defense is going to be better. The safeties over the top can mask the inferior talent level and inexperienced talent level of the corners. The pass rush you can't fake. You can't fake it. And they just ain't got it this year. I mean, we'll see if Monty Osford adds a couple pieces before, but if they're rolling with this, it's going to be the weakest spot.
Now, is Budda Baker going to be the glue that holds this all together?
Yeah. I mean, so here's the thing. Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson have been a dynamic, very underrated duo. Buda's getting closer to 30. Jalen Thompson's still in his prime. Dadrian Taylor-Demerson is a safety they drafted out of Texas Tech in the 4th round, who has made waves.
Big Bills fan.
See,
or a big
every
favorite
single
of Bills
person,
fans.
Every single person. I've done New Orleans. I've done Denver. I've done another one. Every single time I talk about Dadrian Taylor-Demerson, they're like, yep, he was on our board. And it's just like, that's a guy who's going to be the heir apparent. And one thing about Jonathan Gannon is they're going to throw the best players out there, and they're going to make it work. So we don't know if it's going to be all three of those guys on the field in some packages or what, but it's Budda Baker and then Kazir White, former linebacker from Philly who made the Super Bowl run, followed Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rallis over, had a good year last year, was injured towards the end of the year. He's going to be the heartbeat of the defense as an off-ball linebacker, but this is Budda Baker's defense and has been for quite some time.
No, you mentioned Jonathan Gannon. I know there was some skeptics right out of the gate. The guy's it seems he rubs people the wrong way, maybe personality-wise. What is he meant? I mean, it seems he has really turned this program around. What has he meant to Arizona?
He's stability.
Yeah.
You know? Like, what was Sean McDermott when he came over? He was stable. And it wasn't right away, but you could tell a vast difference. He's stable. He's somebody you can call at 3 a.m. and he'll answer. He's not going to be, proverbially speaking. Look at what happened in Philly, and you tell me that Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon were the heart and soul of that team. Oh, and that's another like tangential thing that, Philly's hollow now with those two guys gone. He has been a calming force. He believes in Kyler Murray. How these guys approach the game. We saw it last year. They only won 4 games. They were a bad roster last year. Every week, they wreaked havoc on teams in some form or fashion. And you can't. That's all teaching. That's all coaching. I mean, and that's been Jonathan Gannon from the jump.
I'll tell you, I've been impressed with Jonathan Gannon. I mean, obviously, Howie Roseman seems to really know how to hire. He's done a very, very good job. Seems every coach minus Chip Kelly has been damn near close to a home run. With what they've done so far in Arizona, that going into this week one is about understanding what the Bills are, because quite frankly, no one really knows what this Bills team is. You've got a brand new defensive coordinator in Bobby Babich, who is taking over the play calling this year. And you got somewhat brand new OC in Joe Brady, who really only has a half year off of Ken Dorsey's playbook. So when you're looking at a team that is coming into a second year with some new pieces, but maybe a little bit more continuity in terms of coaching staff, what do you think Arizona is going to do? What's their mindset heading into this game to potentially exploit two very rookie play callers?
I think that if you can take James Cook out of this game, that gives the Cardinals the best chance to win. I mean, I have my fantasy draft later tonight, my big one. I'm targeting James Cook in every single draft that I have. And I don't know why he's not much higher on draft boards. And one of the biggest things that baffled me forever watching from, across the country is, why did Devin Singletary not touch the ball 17 times a game? Oh, wait, they're winning games when maybe somebody else can run the ball besides Josh Allen. Maybe Josh Allen just doesn't need to run over linebackers every damn play, and he doesn't have to. James Cook has a very special skill set. He can't do everything well, but he only caught 2.5 balls a game or something last year. He should be catching 5 or 6 balls a game. He should be touching the ball 20 plus times, and it makes Josh Allen's job easier. And certainly, I think taking James Cook out of it, and then listen, the Cardinals have been notorious for not being able to stop tight ends for a long time, and the fact that the Bills have the Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski thing going on there with Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, that could be something like Dalton Kincaid. I can see having 7 for 70 and 2 touch. The possibilities are endless. But I think if you stop James Cook, it kind of puts a pulse, a hold on everything. And then you got to look at the receivers, which aren't as great as the receiving core once was in Buffalo. So I think that's the pressure point the Cardinals have to put on the OC.
Yeah, certainly with the Bills, I think there's going to be some question marks in terms of how this all shakes out. I think the offense obviously lives and dies with Josh. I mean, that's really just simply as that. But the one thing that I made of mention today, not only in my Twitter, but just in general, is the Bills went ahead and Brandon Beane made a concerted effort of getting guys that could catch. And I'm sure you probably watched in the playoffs where Stephon Diggs literally dropped the most beautiful 60-yard pass maybe ever thrown in a playoff game by Josh Allen. And James Cook dropped a pass, and Trent Sherfield dropped 2 passes, and Gabe Davis didn't play, but I'm sure he dropped a pass at home. It's ridiculous what they couldn't do. So in this offense, it's now predicated on guys that very simply can catch the ball, but also can get open in a phone booth. And I think going against a Cardinals team that really needs some work at this point, my biggest thing, I think the successful point to the Bills winning this is if they can get out and score early. I think Arizona does not want to get into a shootout. I think that is the worst possible scenario for Arizona, because I love what Kyler Murray does, but I don't know in week one if that offense is proficient enough. Josh Allen can literally run down the field in 2 seconds and can throw a mile, and they have a really good running game. I think the balance of all three at this point, even with receivers that are newer, they still, like you said, have Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, James Cook, Khalil Shakir, who's literally had the best catch percentage last year of any qualified receiver. I think they've got enough to be able to balance that out. I just wonder, and maybe you can give me some insight. Do you think that Arizona could get into a shootout and stay competent?
It depends. If it's 14-14 at the end of the first, I think anything's possible, because certainly. This is think of it as this actually came to my head. It's think of it as a 5-12 matchup in the NCAA tournament with 2 teams that don't play each other. So it's nobody knows what the hell is going to happen. There are way more unknowns for both of these teams going into week one than known mainstay things, whether it's Sean McDermott's future or the pass catchers or what the defense is going to look like when you lost some pieces, or, is James Cook prominent role? And like with the Cardinals, like it's a faceless defense in many respects, aside from a couple pillars. The offensive line is better, but who knows what it's going to be like against, Ed Oliver, who's always wreaked havoc on the Cardinals. Like there's so many question marks that a shootout, like put it this way. If the Bills don't put up 24 points against the Cardinals, you guys have bigger problems. Like this is something that should be target practice early on. That's not to say they'll win. I don't know if the defense will be able to, keep the Cardinals from scoring points. Like this is going to come down to field goals and touchdowns. So what it's going to be, who's going to score touchdowns is going to win, and who's going to have to settle for field goals or go for it on 4th and 1 from the 32 to continue the drive is going to lose. Like I don't see this being a blowout. I don't see Buffalo coming in and beating the Cardinals 34-3. I just don't see it happening.
Now, obviously, we talked about the offensive line, and we'll kind of wrap it up. But with the offensive line, I know, obviously Jonah Williams and Paris Johnson and Furl in the middle. Are they enough to, if the Bills defensive line really starts to pick it up? Greg Rousseau has had a stellar offensive line offensive line, stellar preseason. Potentially Von Miller could be back to form. AJ Epinesa has had a really nice preseason. Ed Oliver is a monster in the middle, and Daquan Jones can be a game wrecker. If they get going, is that offensive line enough to be able to keep I know upright's enough because Kyler can literally run in a circle a million times. Are they enough to keep him in the offense going for 4 quarters?
I'll say this. It's the best offensive line Kyler Murray will be playing behind since 2019. Okay. And my favorite thing to say on Locked On for a long time when the offensive line was lesser than, because Steve Keim would rather draft inside linebackers or linebackers and move them inside where they've never played that position before instead of drafting Tristan Wirfs and the like, is the best offensive lineman the Arizona Cardinals have is Kyler Murray's legs. That's the best. So like, that's like an added bonus where he could spin out like Tony Romo used to and Steve Young used to, where he gets a huge arc. Like you said it, like it's kind of a joke, but he would like bend like a pass rusher and have this huge arc and then just get outside. Kyler Murray eats in the gray. Like if there's a broken down player or whatever, he's got all the weapons when it comes down to that. But I feel like if the Cardinals weren't dead last in sacks given up last year, everything's better this year. So I feel like there's no way they'll regress. And Paris Johnson, he's playing his natural position on the left side, and we'll see. Kyler Murray can get the ball out quick too, and I think that's going to be scheme with Drew Petzing if they just can't stop the rush from Buffalo.
Okay, well let's kind of just finish it off right here. I want you to give your prediction for this game, Week 1, Arizona and Buffalo. What are your thoughts?
I think Buffalo will win 27-24. Like I think it'll be something like that, where it's not exactly a shootout like in the 40s, but it's healthy. I think it may be a little clunky early on. It's one of two things early on. It's either guns blazing on offense right away and there's a whole bunch of points scored, or it's going to be like 3-0 with 6 minutes left in the first half, and then people get their legs, and then you kind of explode in the second. But I think it'll be around 50 points scored, and the Cardinals will lose, but it won't be in some massively convincing fashion.
Okay. I like the thought. Guys, make sure if you want more content, Alex does a great job. I actually all week I've been listening to your stuff. Thanks, make sure you give him a follow. Locked On AZ Cardinals on YouTube, and just kind of get more insight. It'll let you know everything that's going on with the Arizona Cardinals before a week and a half from now when we play them in Week 1's matchup. So, Alex, appreciate your time, and we'll be in touch.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you. Guys, that was Alex Clancy from Locked On Cardinals providing some awesome insight. This is going to be a very, very good matchup. We know Kyler Murray has, a ton of juice, is a very, very exciting quarterback. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see how that turns out. I'm interested to see if the Bills and what their offense really kind of translates to, because in this preseason, we know they haven't really shown a whole hell of a lot. If we're being fair, the offense has been very vanilla. Josh has only played a series and a half. Keon Coleman, I know, has been a lot of detractors and doubters about what Keon has been in the preseason because Xavier Worthy's had some pretty mammoth clips. at this point, we don't know what this Bills offense is, and Joe Brady's probably not going to show a whole lot. So, in a week and a half's time, we're going to have a little bit of better understanding. But guys, I want to touch on something, man. I talked on this last week, and I'll finish up with my prediction at the end of the show for the Cardinals and Bills, and we'll talk more next week before the actual show. Though I think potentially the show might be at 6 instead of 7 next week because the first game of the season is next week. So I'm never going to be able to compete with the NFL on a Thursday night, and especially for the first game of the season. But what I want to talk about, guys, is what about this Josh Allen nonsense? So feel free in the chat if you're watching. I want to hear what you guys have to say, what your thoughts are on the overrated nonsense. So ESPN came out and they interviewed 103 players about Josh Allen. And if you follow me on Twitter, then you very much know I have been incredibly vocal today. And I am a Josh Allen apologist, supporter. I wave the banner. I'm very much like McDermott. I mean, I will stand behind Josh Allen 10 times out of 10 every day of the week, including twice on Sunday. So with Josh Allen, the survey came out and said that Josh Allen not only was the number one shit talker, right? But Josh Allen was also the most overrated quarterback in the NFL. So the reason I kind of want to touch on this is, well, it was 11 players that said he was overrated. It was 103 total players that were surveyed. So 11 players said he was 11 players made him the number one most voted overrated quarterback, right? So not 103 said it, but Josh had the most votes at 11. And second was Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa, which in and of itself should tell you right there, the fact that Josh is in the same conversation with Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa is asinine in and of itself. But what I want to talk about with this conversation is this thought about Josh Allen being overrated, which if you look at Josh Allen's stats, right? Josh Allen has some of the best stats of any quarterback in the months of December and January. So when teams are literally either running out of steam or needing to put something together, Josh Allen is playing some of his best football. He is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in January. In postseason time, Josh Allen has one of the best records, one of the best stat lines, throws the least amount of interceptions, and has rallied his team in some of the biggest games yet. Now, that doesn't mean that he has won those games because wins and losses are not a quarterback stat. If you don't believe me, go talk to Bruce Nolan. But in terms of Josh Allen in the postseason, he has done everything and anything you could possibly imagine. Has he had his squalls where things haven't worked out? Absolutely. Every quarterback has. But for the most part, Josh Allen has been, as advertised, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in the postseason. Here's another interesting one. Let's talk about Josh Allen as a quarterback and how he lines up with his contemporaries, right? I mentioned this before, but Josh Allen on a consistent basis is a more productive, a more accomplished, minus the accolades like MVP, but has week in and week out proven that he can be trusted in the biggest moments. Josh Allen has one of the best records in primetime games. Josh Allen has one of the best records against his own division mates. Josh Allen, yeah, all probably were against the Jets. I wouldn't doubt that either. Josh Allen also, and I keep saying his name over and over. So, by the way, cheers to all of you. I love you guys for being here. I appreciate it. If you haven't caught this before, this is Charge, my new podcast. This is the third week that we are on air. And I'm glad that you've chosen to be here on Cover One. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at @ThomasDeLoss. But Josh Allen is and has been the catalyst to the Bills team. I mean, the laundry list of quarterbacks the Buffalo Bills have gone through to this point before they got to Josh will tell you enough that a guy out of Fireball, California, that went to a JUCO school, played at Wyoming, was drafted 7th, was really considered a project, came into a very piss-poor wide receiver core in Buffalo, and still managed to excel and ascend, and has every year become a better version of himself, is the truest form of a quarterback that is the farthest thing from underrated or overrated. Now, I did hear one person say something, and I think it was Nick Wright that said this, that the only quarterbacks that are really overrated are quarterbacks that are really good, right? You don't ever hear of a bad, or not just quarterbacks, but a bad athlete that's considered overrated, right? Generally speaking, it's players that are not very good that end up being underrated, and players that are really good that are considered overrated. There's not really an in-between. And Josh Allen, on a very consistent basis, has been really the marquee to the Buffalo Bills, their success. And he's done it by just doing the right stuff. I mean, if you look at the numbers, right? Josh Allen doubles and pales in comparison to the numbers of Tua and Jalen Hurts, right? The other guys that are in that category. Josh Allen has double the touchdowns than both of them. And I know the big conversation and talking point is Josh Allen's turnovers. And one point to this that really bothers me is when you talk about interceptions, you have to be fair, right? You have to be fair and honest. And I know people talk about me and they say I'm not very critical of Josh. And listen, I've been critical of Josh and the things that he needs to do better. There has been many times that Josh Allen has lost games. The Jets game last year was on Josh, period. No matter how you twist it up, Josh Allen is the reason we lost that game. Those 3 interceptions were backbreaking. There has been multiple occasions where Josh has thrown ill-advised passes, has tried to force throws that shouldn't have been done, has tried to be too arrogant with his arm, and that happens. He's a guy that believes in who he is, what he has, and the ability that God gave him. I'm never going to fault him because just like Brett Favre, a lot of times with these type of quarterbacks, you live and you die with these qualities, right? You win with these qualities and you die with those qualities because you know that they can make amazing plays happen, but once in a while you're going to get those bonehead moments where you're saying, what are you doing, Josh? So with Josh in those moments, you also have to take a step back and say, there are times that Josh can do things that nobody else can do. I mean, and with interceptions, you're going to have to qualify that stuff, right? Those interceptions against the Jets, right? There was 3 of them. 2 of them were 60-yard punts. They were to the other end of the field. Was it a desirable outcome? Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit there and fault him when it's the same outcome on 3rd down as a punt would be on 4th. It is what it is. You just have to understand that those moments are going to come. But there's also been times, like a couple of years ago, we were playing against the Los Angeles Rams. He threw a pass to Isaiah McKenzie. What happened? Bounced off Isaiah McKenzie's chest and right into the defender's hands. That has happened countless occasions. When he played the Minnesota Vikings, there was a bad snap, and they considered it a fumble because he couldn't get it out of the end zone. Not his fault. Nothing you can do, but it fell on his back because he falls on the sword more often than he doesn't. There are so many occasions that Josh takes the blame for a bad play. Now, are there bad interceptions? Certainly. But if you look at last year, 3 of the games, Josh had 7 interceptions of his 18. So for 15 games, Josh only had 11 interceptions. 15. That's less than 1 per game. That is an average that I can live with every single day of the week. Josh has done what he had to do. There has been games like the 13-second game that had nothing to do with Josh. Last year's game against the Chiefs, he did everything in his power within the script of the game plan to put them in a position for success, and the team let him down. James Cook had a pass in his hands that would have walked right into the end zone. He dropped it. Trent Sherfield had 2 separate literal catches that he could have made. One was a bit of a one arm, one of them was a diving one. But as a wide receiver, you should be making those plays. He dropped both. Stephon Diggs, albeit was a deep bomb, put that ball right in his hands. Stephon Diggs should have came down with it. Those are 4 right there that would have changed the outcome of that game. And guess what? I understand that people want to sit there and say, oh, Josh should have took the check down to Stephon Diggs at the end of that game. Let me be clear. If you're driving and your car breaks down, right? And the next morning you go to work, are you going to take the car that just broke down, or are you going to take your wife's car that you know drives? Stephon Diggs dropped a pass just before that last drive. Josh Allen made a decision in that moment to go to the guy who had the best catch percentage of anybody on that team and the best catch percentage of any qualified receiver in the NFL in Khalil Shakir. It is what it is, folks. Josh is going to do what Josh is going to do, and the decisions he's made have made some of the best moments for this franchise. And Josh did the right pass right there. Yes. Was it unfortunate that Chris Jones, literally a Hall of Fame defensive tackle / defensive end, pushed one of the better left tackles right into literally into his lap? Yes, of course it was. It was very unfortunate. Could Josh have stepped into the pocket or sidestepped maybe? Certainly. Josh did what he could in that moment, and he made a throw that very few, if only maybe one other guy could make in the NFL, threading the needle between two defenders, which he had done before to Jake Kumaro literally just the year prior against the Packers. So he knew he could do it. He had done it before. He went to a guy who knew he could catch, and unfortunately he got ran into. This weird narrative that Josh can't, or that Josh doesn't, or that Josh is not as good as Lamar, which I'm sorry. Listen, there's only one quarterback in the NFL, and I said this last week, and it pisses me off that we keep having this conversation. There's only one quarterback that's better than Josh, and that's Patrick Mahomes. I like Joe Burrow, but he can't stay on the field, so it disqualifies him for even being in the conversation. If you can't stay healthy, I don't want to hear about how good or bad you might be. Because guess what? If you're not on the field, you're an irrelevant component to an offense. Period. And quite frankly, Joe Burrow should be good. He has Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd last year. He's now got Jermaine Burton. He's got literally every possible weapon you could possibly have. Lamar Jackson has not been able to beat Josh or the Buffalo Bills in the postseason, and quite frankly, has literally been a downfall to his own team, because every time you think they're going to do it, like last year where they had literally one of the statistically best defenses in NFL history, he still couldn't get it done. So I don't want to hear about him either. Tua's not even in the same realm. The guy's got an arm that can't throw outside the numbers. Jalen Hurts is literally Dak Prescott. So there's nobody else. Maybe CJ Stroud. We'll see what he can do this year. Maybe he'll be in that conversation. But at this point, there's only one quarterback that is in the same conversation, and that's Patrick Mahomes. Period. That's it. So now let's talk about the game coming up 1 week from this Sunday, and that is the Arizona Cardinals and the Buffalo Bills. Folks, this is going to be a very, very interesting matchup. Obviously, you saw Alex Clancy from Locked On Cardinals give us some insight into the Cardinals. Now, I do want to talk about this Buffalo Bills offense and what to expect, as well as I do want to talk about the Buffalo Bills defense. And first off, congratulations to all 53 who made the roster, including Joe Andreessen. Man, what I tweeted this out. What an incredible story that was. Joe Andreessen, a kid from Lancaster High School who went in for just a local tryout, ends up getting a contract, and then ends up getting a 53-man contract rostered spot. You can't really make up those stories. Those are the endearing, romantic stories that you hear from sports that you fall in love with, and everybody rooting on Buffalo Joe. So that's exciting. We'll see where he's, if he ends up starting or where he is in the roster. If it is Dorian Williams that ends up being the starter. But in this offense, one thing that keeps getting talked about is the Bills' lack of weapons. And folks, I kind of want to touch on this, because if you look at the Buffalo Bills and what they have, right? Hold on one second. I'm a little parched. When you talk about the Buffalo Bills and their offense, you've got a couple main components, right? Obviously, you got Josh Allen, which at the end of the day is always going to be a dynamic piece. He's going to cause defenses to have to pause, which also part of that overrated conversation. If you're number one on the game plan, like LeBron James said, if you're number one in the game plan, you're not overrated. You are a huge component to the Bills offense. That he is. But so he's a big piece of the Bills offense. You got James Cook and Ray Davis, who in the preseason has proven not only to be an efficient runner inside the tackles, but can bounce it out and has some juice. But the big guy that I really want to talk about is Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid is not getting the love he should, not only locally, but nationally. Dalton Kincaid in this offense is going to be massive. Massive, ladies and gentlemen. Last year, 90-plus targets, 73 receptions. He was efficient with very little exposure in the first half of the season. I mean, quite frankly, Ken Dorsey just did not know how to use Dalton Kincaid to being a successful piece to this offense. He just didn't. Joe Brady is much more efficient. He understands trends. He understands how to keep the ball moving. He can pivot, which is one thing Dorsey never understood. Joe Brady can pivot. If it ain't working, don't keep leaning into it. You can switch and you can find something that maybe is more effective. But he can get Dalton Kincaid early and often involved, both inside and outside. That's going to be big. The addition of Dawson Knox back into this offense with a fully functioning and healthy hand is going to be a huge component to this offense. But the 3 wide receivers, including Matt Collins as number 4, are going to be big for Josh. Because, and I mentioned this earlier today on my Twitter, which if you don't follow me, go right ahead, at the Thomas DeLoss. Part of the Bills offense that I think, like I said with Alex Clancy earlier, is, Brandon Beane, every single year you notice that he always tries to find something that doesn't work, right? Whether it's something that another team did well, like a way to beat Patrick Mahomes was a defensive end, so we went out and got Von Miller. We needed better secondary. Went out and got Kyer Elam. Went and traded for Rasul Douglas. They felt that they needed better help on the inside of the offensive line and got Osiris Torrance. They needed more help in the offense. They went and got Dalton Kincaid. The Bills have constantly tried to evolve. They've tried to listen. They've tried to be better, right? Part of that is the Bills going ahead and understanding that they can evolve as an offense, right? And with evolving as an offense, they wanted to get bigger because a lot of their guys for the longest time, and what Sean McDermott literally labeled as the Smurfs, they went and got bigger, right? They got guys like Keon Coleman. Dalton Kincaid is a big dude. You got guys like MVS. You got Keon Coleman, who's really, really tall. They've got a bunch of guys that fulfill that larger-than-life role. They have also got guys that are exceptionally talented at creating separation and have a just burst or speed to them in that element right off the line. But the biggest part to all of this that I think is important that you really need to think about is the ability to catch the ball. And I know it sounds rudimentary and it sounds just like, Thomas, come on, man. What are we doing here? We're rehashing the same stuff. But it's very, very important that we really touch on the Bills' focus on finding guys that could catch the ball was paramount. It was everything to this Bills offense. They found guys, Kincaid, Shakir, Keon Coleman, Kincaid, Shakir, Keon Coleman, and Samuel, all guys together that had a catch percentage of under 5% last year. Or, excuse me, a drop percentage, not a catch, drop percentage under 5% last year. They were very good. That alone is a huge indicator of what was most important to Josh Allen, but most important to Brandon Beane. The other side to this, and I mentioned this before, but now that you don't have, the likes of, Gabe Davis or Stephon Diggs, I don't think Josh feels so compelled to have to worry about pressing the ball to one of those two, right? You've got guys that can go up, right? So you have the contested catch guy in Keon Coleman, but now you have guys like when their best offense was 2020, and I mentioned, again, I keep mentioning my Twitter, but a lot of stuff that I talk about on my show, I kind of lean into from my Twitter account. One of the main points to all this was Josh Allen wanting to find guys that he trusted. And first couple years in Josh Allen's career here, he had a bunch of guys that he just didn't trust. He had Kelvin Benjamin. He had Zay Jones. You go down the list, a bunch of guys that just couldn't catch. It was really frustrating for Josh to have to throw to guys that he just knew it was a 50-50 shot they were going to come down with it. So what did they do? They went into free agency. They signed John Brown, and they signed Cole Beasley. And then the following year, they went ahead and they drafted Gabe Davis, and they signed Stephon Diggs. And the reason I mention all those guys is because that was Josh Allen's best year. 37 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. It was his best stat line, his best yardage, his overall best completion percentage at 67%, and his best efficiency metrics. He was at his best. He was not only able to matriculate the ball down the field, but he was able to do it in a calm, collective, but comfortable fashion. And I think part of what made the Bills offense last year really, excuse me, sorry for the yawn there. It's been a long day. What made this Bills offense so anemic was the fact that it was so hot or cold. It was parabolic, right? It was an offense that went to one side of the spectrum or the other, right? You know that the doctor's office, see those balls where they swing one way and go to the other? That's what you're talking about. An offense that did not have a real level of consistency. It was an offense that one week you might have Gabe Davis with 130 yards, 3 touchdowns, and Stephon Diggs lighting it up, and James Cook really having a nice week, to the Giants game where they can't get anything going. They have no consistency. They're not able to matriculate the ball down the field. They can't contain drives and get the ball to their best offensive weapons and really have any pacing to the offense. Well, that was what they did this year. If you look at what they got guys that they know that Josh, in a moment, in a vacuum, when things are falling apart, he can turn to. He has guys like Khalil Shakir, who in the slot, likely where he's going to spend most of his time, he can throw the ball to and not have to worry about a guy that's going to drop it. He knows Khalil Shakir is going to come down. And unlike a guy like Cole Beasley, Khalil Shakir has some incredible run after the catch ability. So his innate athleticism, his speed, his short area burst, his quickness in and out of his cuts allow him to be an efficient route runner, but also to add on and tack extra yards, which in this offense was really a big detriment. They just were not able to create beyond the catch point. So that's going to be a big part to this offense. Adding in Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid and Keon Coleman and Curtis Samuel, a guy who they're going to use all over very similar to like a Deebo Samuel, but not in that battering ram fashion. So you got guys that they can use in many different ways that they're going to be able to deploy, but give Josh peace of mind. And I'm telling you, folks, Josh Allen comfortable. Josh Allen just feeling himself. Josh Allen knowing that he has a level of peace of mind that when he goes into a game, he knows his targets are going to have his back. Because realistically, guys, in the game of football, knowing that 52 other guys have your back is everything and anything a football player can ask for. You say, Sean McDermott, the Bills talk about the 111th. 111th means doing your role. And that includes catching the ball. That includes running after the catch, creating extra yards, getting those touchdowns, coming down with the ball, not fumbling, being the guy that Josh Allen can depend on. And you know it, just like all of us know it, right? And we'll talk about it, right? If you've got family members that you need to make sure somebody's going to be on time, you're not going to call a person who's consistently late. You're not. You're going to call the guy, like myself and my own family, but you're going to call the guy that is always on time. You want the guy that's always prompt, that always delivers, that always follows through on his promises, that makes sure he is doing what you expect of him. That's what Josh Allen needed. Now that's what Josh Allen has. He has a bunch of guys, family members, that he knows he can go to that are going to deliver on a week in and week out basis. And is it going to be flashy? Not always. It might just be like that 2020 offense. It might be 16 play drives. Josh Allen might throw the ball 38 times because that's what it called for. There might be games where it's a good mix of running the ball and passing the ball where they really get involved with Ray Davis and James Cook. That's okay. Because at the end of the day, the number one metric that we all live and die by is the W in the win column. Period. As long as they come down with a win, I don't care how or what it looks like. Would you prefer them to be prettier than not? Of course. But at the end of the day, if the Bills come down with a win, that's what's most important. So I'm going to go ahead and close out this show, folks. I appreciate you guys joining tonight. This has been a lot of fun. Obviously, you saw Alex Clancy from Locked On Cardinals earlier tonight. He kind of talked about the expectations. My projection, I'm going to say the Bills are going to win 31-17 against the Arizona Cardinals. I think Josh is going to have a good day. I'm going to say 25 for 36 for 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 rushing touchdown on the ground. I think it's going to be a good day for the Buffalo Bills, a consistent day. It's going to be a beautiful weather day. So the crowd should be buzzing, and really getting out in front. But guys, this has been Charge, another one of our wonderful podcasts here at the Cover One Sports Network. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at @ThomasDeLoss. Make sure you subscribe to the Cover One YouTube channel as well as Cover One One Pass. We will see you here next week. It may not be 7. It might be a little bit earlier. But for the start of the NFL season, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the Buffalo Bills have to offer for the 2024 season. And my daughter, I don't know what I'm having to this point. I keep saying my son. Maybe it'll be a boy. I have a child coming in a couple weeks, October 2nd. It's our second child. So here's to hoping the Buffalo Bills can deliver on an exciting and very, very special season for myself, for my cousin Zach, his wife Ashley. They're expecting a month later. I think they're watching too. So love you guys. Hopefully that they go ahead and can deliver a good season for all of us and really bring home that Lombardi trophy that I know Josh has been earning for. So, guys, ladies and gentlemen, again, my name is Thomas DeLoss. Thank you for tuning in to Cover One. Thank you for tuning in to Charge. We will see you here next week. Let's go Buffalo.
Make me wanna. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.